Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Hello there, everybody. This is Guineith Isaac speaking here, keeping the chair warm for Vincent this week. Nathan's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota this morning. It's this evening for me. It's here in Australia, it's just after midnight, but I'm aware that it's around about, depending on where you are, 9 a.m. or thereabouts in the United States. And if you'd like to give us a call, you can reach us on 866-582-9933. And our guest this morning is Dr. Norm Shealy, and he should be here with us right now. Are you there, Dr. Shealy?
I am here, Guineith. Good morning, or good evening, or whatever.
Yep, no, it's good. Yep, I normally get a few hours sleep before the broadcast. So that's why, usually if I do that, I'm reasonably bright and cheery, despite the fact that it's the middle of the night over here.
Yeah, you're a brave person to me. I could not do a regular schedule after midnight.
Yeah. You do find that your body does adjust to night shift, though.
Well, everybody's different.
Yeah. Or to a degree, anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll just start this evening, or this morning, sorry. We'll just start today by, I've got a couple of emailed questions from our listeners, and, I would like to ask them. So I'll just find where I've made a note here. We have a listener with a trace of blood in their urine. What to do about that if it's accompanied by slight abdominal pain?
Well,
and this listener has seen their doctor and is on Levaquin.
Well, that is not an adequate solution for that thing. That needs a thorough evaluation. Blood in the urine may or may not be associated with infection, but it means that the entire kidney, urinary tract needs thorough evaluation. That's a situation which I would not ignore.
Yeah.
And if the doctor did nothing but order Levaquin on the basis of the urinalysis, it's a stupid doctor, should be fired and find somebody else.
Yeah, okay. No, that's fine. And we have another email here. Somebody has protruding veins on the outside of the feet combined with weight loss.
Again, this requires a competent, thorough evaluation. An excellent family physician would be adequate.
Okay. Yep. Would that possibly be varicose veins in the feet?
Well, on the face?
On the feet.
Oh, feet. Oh, yeah. If it's on the feet, it's probably varicose vein. But again, I would have a doctor check it because the loss of weight is the thing that's more worrisome than the veins.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, that's fine. And so that's about all. The other thing is we had a third email. Somebody wanted to know the risk of a bronchioscopy.
I'm sorry,
if there was any risks associated with a bronchioscopy.
Well,
bronchoscopy.
there is a risk of the anesthetic that's used, is a risk of causing bleeding or scarring. But if one has the need for bronchoscopy, the risk of not having the bronchoscopy is probably greater than the risk of having it.
Yeah, because you've really got to see what's wrong, hey?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fine. And now that we've got those emails out of the way, what would you like to speak about today?
Well,
is there
I always say I can speak for 10 minutes or 10 days, and I can either choose a subject or follow your subject. So we can flip a coin.
Well, it's probably best if you speak what you want to say.
Well, I think it's really important to concentrate on the number one problem in this country, in the United States. Obviously, I don't know what it is in Australia. The number one death and premature death problem in this country is opioids, and it is all the result of the pharmaca mafia and our FDA. First, second, and third, the ability to prescribe opioids after the first month after an illness should be restricted. It should be allowed. And we have the number one cause of death of people under the age of 50 is opioids in the United States. And it's very high, period. There is no evidence, no clinical benefit from using opioids after about a month from any acute illness. The only exception in a chronic illness would be someone who's dying of cancer. Yes, give them opioids. If they're dying of cancer, fine. If they're not dying of cancer, no opioids after the first month.
Okay. Would that include Panadine Fort?
I don't know that.
Because that has codeine phosphate in it. I'm not sure if you would include that under the...
Well, yeah, if it's got codeine in it, that's an opioid.
Yeah.
Codeine is as addicting as all the others.
Yeah, because my husband was on Panadine Fort in the last years of his life because he had chronic arthritis all through his body on account of the fact that in his earlier life, he was a painter and decorator. And he fell off the side of a building onto a concrete block at one stage, and he almost killed himself that way. And he smashed just about every bone in his body, but by some miracle of God, he survived, and he spent about 6 months in a whole body cast. And as he aged, his doctor had warned him that as he aged, he would probably develop arthritis through most of the breaks in his bones, and this, in fact, is what happened. And it was terribly painful for him, and he developed, he developed the arthritis, and he ended up being on the Panadine Fort through the last part of his life. But the Panadine enabled him to function, whereas if he hadn't had the Panadine Fort, then he would have been totally incapacitated just with the pain of all this arthritis through these scarred bones.
Well, there are a number of alternatives, including half a dozen different kinds of electrotherapy, from electromagnetic field therapy, et cetera, and then there is CBD oil, the non-psychotropic aspect of cannabis that is excellent for arthritic pain. And then there are a number of other anti-inflammatory things, such as turmeric or curcumin.
Yeah,
it does require a competent, somebody who knows what to do. The average physician, unfortunately, is not it, and the average pain clinic sucks.
Yeah. Well, he died about 14 years ago of atherosclerosis. And I've always wondered, incidentally, there was a genetic component to it because his father died at the same age also of atherosclerosis, and that's where a piece of cholesterol broke off on the inside of his heart and caused him to have a sudden and massive heart attack.
Well, now, that kind of heart attack does have a genetic component. Everyone's different. My father and 4 of his 5 brothers all died between 48 and 54 years of age. They all smoked. Brother number 6 did not smoke, and he lived to be 80. So, you see, in my own family, I would have to say the genetic component was probably nil. The smoking component was quite striking. But massive sudden heart attacks, there is a genetic predisposition.
Yeah, and it was interesting because his brother also had a heart attack at the age of 67, but he survived because he recognized the early symptoms and was able to get to an emergency department.
Right.
And they were able to save his life because they did the tests and the MRIs and whatever, and they found out what was going wrong, and they were able to intervene and save his life. But that's something that's quite interesting. But the thing that disturbs me all these years later was that at the time my husband was also on Celebrex. And
which is a horrible drug, in my opinion, and I would not use it for anybody anytime. But all of the antidepressants are that way. They cause more trouble than they help. Yeah,
and this was about the time that the great Vioxx scandal was happening. And, of course, I trained a long time ago as a scientist, as an environmental scientist, but I knew enough about chemistry to go and look up the chemical formula of Vioxx and the chemical formula of Celebrex, and I noticed there was only 1 chlorine atom of difference between them.
Yes.
And very, very closely related.
There are 4 major published articles that say if all of the negative research studies had, quote, been allowed to be published, the net result would be 0. In other words, there was 75% of the negative studies were never allowed to be published, so that it fakes the outcome.
Hello, everybody. This is Guineith Isaac speaking here. We have Dr. Norm Shealy with us this morning, and we're basically having an open discussion on all things health-related. I actually have thought of a number of really, really potentially very interesting health questions during the break that I would really love to have answers to. One of them is, I'm interested in all things scientific. Okay, anytime that I see a anatomy textbook out there when I'm out and about, I usually try and pick it up if I can afford it. And I go to general anatomy textbooks, and there's one little organ of the body that receives hardly any attention in a standard anatomy textbook, and that is the pineal gland. And I was wondering if you could help us out with any information on the pineal gland.
Well, the pineal gland is rather tiny. Basically, everybody's ear is somewhat different. But in my head, if I put my finger on the top and back of the ear on either side, it goes straight through the brain. Right in the very center would be the pineal gland.
Yep.
It's fairly tiny. It's referred to in metaphysics as the third eye.
Yep.
Basically, its major, I think, function is to help regulate the relationship between sleep and wake. In a healthy person who is not a night owl, we wake up somewhere between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. most people. and go to bed, roughly around 10 or 11. When you wake up in a normal way, a chemical called serotonin, I call serotonin the bright-eyed, bushy-tail wake-up hormone.
Yep.
It goes up, and it stays up from roughly wake-up time until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then it goes down a little bit, not a lot, varying people, until 9 or 10 o'clock at night, when it goes as low as it's going to get in the 24 hours. But it's converted in the pineal into melatonin.
Yeah.
The melatonin then stays up until about 4 a.m. in the morning in most people, and it begins to go back down to its lowest level between 4 a.m. and the wake-up time. So it's that diurnal, that up and down 24-hour rhythm that is responsible for how bright-eyed, bushy-tailed we are during the day. Now, it also has numerous other functions, particularly in regulating the pituitary gland, and therefore it is connected to every hormonal function in the body. So it's a critically important gland, and interestingly, it is influenced a huge amount by our environment. That is, being exposed to sunlight helps it. If you don't ever get outside, and even if you live in a cave, a modern cave, then your melatonin, serotonin regulation is always somewhat off. Second fact is you need to sleep in complete darkness. If there's any light in the room other than a red light, like a red light on a clock, but that clock should be more than 3 feet away from your head, and if it's blue or yellow or white or anything, that does interfere with your melatonin, serotonin control. And, of course, exposure to the huge amount of, in this country, 60 cycle activity that is everywhere, again, it helps to interfere with the pineal. But the number one thing that interferes in this country is fluoride, fluoridated water.
Yep.
Fluoridated water leads to calcification of the...
Okay, we're heading into a break, but I really want to continue this discussion after the break, okay?
Right.
Hello, everybody. This is Guineith Isaacs speaking, keeping the chair warm for Vincent this week. I'm here with Dr. Norm Shealy, and we're discussing the pineal gland. And I think that you were mentioning, Dr. Shealy, that the number one inhibitor of proper function of the pineal gland was fluorosis.
Oh, yes. That is one of the most stupid, ignorant, dangerous, evil things that has ever been done to the human body with fluoridation of water, and no health benefits whatsoever. On the other hand, if you live in a place where the water is fluoridated, the only thing you can do is you can't boil it. That won't get rid of it. You can get rid of chlorine by boiling, but you can't get rid of fluoride that way. You have to get a fluoride remover, at least for your drinking water and cooking water. But other things that can help is to have adequate vitamin D3. The average person in this country, at least, again, lives in a modern cave. We very few people get 15 minutes even a day outside in real light. So adding adequate vitamin D, which for the average American is a minimum of 4,000 or 5,000 units a day. Adequate boron. Interestingly, if you don't have adequate boron, you can't use the vitamin D as optimally. So you need 9 to 12 milligrams of boron a day. And, of course, you need K2 also. Vitamin K2 is critical. It works almost like a Siamese twin with vitamin D in some aspects. And so you need a minimum of 100 micrograms, and if you've got a lot of stress, up to 15 milligrams a day of vitamin K2 in order to metabolize things adequately.
Okay. I know that you get vitamin D from sunlight. What would be a nutritional source of K2?
Spinach.
Okay.
Most of the green vegetables.
Okay. Yep. No, that's really, really good to know. We have vegetable gardens here, and one of the main staple green vegetables that I grow is kale. Kale
That's my favorite of all green vegetables, not just because of the K, but it actually it has huge amounts of antioxidants and is one of the best sources of natural calcium.
Yep. And, I was able to get a hold of some seeds of a particular kind of kale that is actually native to the Mediterranean and grows wild all around the Mediterranean. It's called Chaumolia. It's also known as walking stick kale because it grows very, very tall. They can grow up to 5 or 6 feet tall.
And the first word was tamarind? What was before the walking stick?
Walking stick kale. But in French, it's called chou, C-H-O-U, moulia. That's M-O-U-I-L-L-E-A or something.
Okay.
E-R.
Well, I will look it up because I've been a fan of kale for well over 40 years.
It can be interesting to grow in a hot climate, though. It's normally thought of as being a cold climate vegetable, but this is one that will grow in an arid or a semi-arid climate because it comes from around the Mediterranean and it has a high level of salt tolerance. If there's anyone in a coastal area or in a very saline area where there's a lot of, salinity problems with the soil. And it does really, really well. And somehow or other, probably I think about the time of the Crusades, the Chaumolia kale found its way to Britain and Ireland. And it got cultivated there as the walking stick kale, and there they actually grow it for its amazing stem, which they often do actually turn into walking sticks.
Huh.
If you go on the internet and look up a photo of it, it's really quite a remarkable creature. At the moment, we've probably maybe got 100 baby Chaumolias growing in the garden, and probably around about between 6 and 8 big ones. And that is absolutely marvelous. But I'll tell you why I was asking about the pineal gland. I work as a professional psychic, and I find that I after a long day's work, I actually feel quite tired. And the part of me that I feel has worked the most has been my pineal gland, because I actually find that I do see people's situations that they are in, and I can accurately describe the rooms in their houses. I can describe people that are around them. I can describe situations that they're in, and it actually is accurate. And I feel that is because I'm doing this sort of work all the time, that my pineal gland is getting a really good workout every single work day. And it's like any other body part. If you keep using it, it will grow stronger. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, that's interesting. By the way, it is available at Amazon. I just found the seeds. Next year, I will grow walking stick kale as well. I usually use dwarf curly kale.
Okay.
It replenishes itself. I mean, the more you pick it, the more you get.
Yeah, but, that's right.
But just for fun,
well, the Chaumolia is the same, and the leaves, depending on your climate and your soil, they can grow up to the size of a dinner plate.
Oh, yeah.
Each leaf.
The pictures of it show it being quite huge, yes.
And you only need 2 or 3 leaves for a really, really, really generous meal. And when it does go to flower, it just produces hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of seeds per plant. But it's the same with any brassica. You have to make sure that it doesn't cross-fertilize with other brassicas.
Right. Well, interestingly, there is another way also to help decalcify the pineal, and that is a legume, the seeds of a legume called tamarind, Tamarind. And there are several scientific studies showing the health benefits. It helps reduce inflammation throughout the body, but I would say it lowers cholesterol, improves heart health, all of those things. But that's the fruit itself. The seeds, I don't know. Certainly, it's got a lot of vitamin C, a lot of other organic compounds, but I don't know how you get tamarind other than growing it.
I actually have growing in my garden a tamarind tree. It's a rainforest tree. It grows pods, and inside the pods there is a sticky, almost like a syrup or a sticky paste, and the seeds are contained within the paste. Okay.
Okay.
The tree that I've got is only about 3 feet tall at the moment, and it will be some years before it makes any pods whatsoever. But it's a rainforest tree. It will grow. It hates frost. Okay. It's in a sheltered area where we are that practically never gets frosted, because on the other side of the wall is our fireplace, which is practically burning 24 hours a day for most of the year. So that particular wall and that particular part of the house, although it's on the southwest side of the house, it never gets frosted, because that's where the fireplace is. But it is a rainforest tree, so you would have to take account of that according to your climate. And it's a subtropical to tropical tree. So really it is marginal here, but it's been in for about, about 6 to 9 months. And it survived last winter's frost. And we'll see how it goes. But maybe in a few years' time it will flower and start to make tamarind pods and tamarind paste. But you're saying that it's the tamarind seeds that actually have the medicinal qualities.
Yes, as far as I can tell, that did. I'm trying to find out whether I haven't been able to find a source of buying tamarind to eat, or I'm going to keep looking.
Okay, I think you'll find if you have any Indian grocers or Chinese grocers where you live, it's very, very popular in Indian food and Chinese food. And I think you'll find that if you go to an Indian grocer or a Chinese grocer and ask for the tamarind paste, and I think you'll find they probably say it tamarind rather than tamarind.
Yes.
But even if you write it down and say, do you have this, and TAMARIND, then I think you'll find that they might be able to get it for you at an Asian grocer.
Yes, it says here, look for it in jars at your local Asian or Indian food store.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, it's quite sweet, a good sugar substitute. We're heading into a break, and we'll be back soon. Hello, everybody. This is Guineith Isaac speaking. I'm here today with Dr. Norm Shealy, and we are discussing the pineal gland and tamarind, and all aspects of maintaining a healthy level of nutrition, and trying to keep the bad out of the body, and proper nutrition, etc., etc. Basically, what I wanted to ask about was, is there any relationship between the tamarind paste that you know of as being beneficial for diabetics? Because it's very, very sweet, but I don't think that it has any of the usual sugars in it. I don't know how much you know about tamarind paste.
Well, I can't find it yet. I've been searching the whole break, but I haven't found it. It is available on Amazon, of course. There are a number of sources of it in this country, and so I'm going to be looking into it further, but I don't know what the particular sugar is. Yeah, because it is very, very sweet. I've actually had tamarind paste in the past, and even using it as a sweetener in beverages. The other one that the other artificial, or not artificial, it's totally natural, but alternative sweetener that I have growing about the place from time to time is stevia plants. And, I would like to know what you know about stevia as an alternative sweetener. I don't know anything about it.
Okay. It's a herb that grows. It's growing in
wait a minute.
popularity.
I take it, even though I spent a year in Australia, I had trouble with your accent. Stevia.
Stevia.
Yes.
Stevia, sorry. No, that's fine. Have I said it? I think I've said it properly now. Stevia.
Well, it was proper the other way, but I just didn't hear it.
Stevia.
Yeah, I know stevia quite well. If you want to use a safer alternative to sugar, I certainly recommend stevia. Now, personally, I don't particularly care for it, but that's just because I don't use it and never have. I've tasted it once or twice, didn't feel it did anything, and I weaned myself from sugar 47 years ago, so I don't need to worry about it. But I do recommend it as an alternative if you need the sweet taste. Yeah, because
we have it growing in the garden. From time to time, it does tend to be susceptible to frost, I have found. So, maybe in a area where you have heavy frost, it may be better to grow it as an annual rather than but it will grow as a perennial. What I do, one of the things on my farm, is I actually try to grow as many medicinal type herbs as possible. Okay, because from what I can see, we're heading into a full-on collapse situation, and I'm interested in natural medicine, and especially natural herbs. And the type of herb culture that I do is called wildcrafting, or wild simulated growing of herbs, which means that I take cuttings from various herbs that I know, and I try and stimulate their natural environment that they would naturally grow in, because I've heard that their medicinal properties that way are much greater. I would really, really love to talk about that I think we're at the top of the hour, aren't we? After the news.
We've got another hour to talk about it.
About herbal medicines.
Oh, yeah.
And cultivation of medicinal herbs. I would love to speak about that when we get back. Hello there, everyone. This is Guineith Isaac speaking. I'm here for the second hour with Dr. Norm Shealy, and we're going to be having a discussion on medicinal herbs and the benefits of wild-crafted herbs. And I'll go through and I'll just name some of the herbs that I grow here on my farm. One of the main ones, actually, when I moved onto the place, I found that it was more or less a weed that was growing here, just all over the place, especially in the valley. It was a herb called horehound. That's Horehound. And when I first got here, I was just pulling it out all over the place because apparently it was, considered to be a weed by the local farmers. But I got that still small voice on the inside of me saying, just stop, you need to do some more research on this plant. And I found out that it had some medicinal properties. Have you ever heard of this plant?
Oh, yes, or at least that's one of the fairly well-known ones. It's supposed its greatest use today is for bronchitis and coughing and the upper respiratory tract. I think it's also used in cough drops.
In what, sorry?
Cough drops.
Oh, cough drops, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. I found that out in the process of my research. And as soon as I found that out, I stopped pulling it up. And I've since been wildcraft cultivating it, occasionally going out and cutting the plants and, hanging them up to dry with a view to making them into a tea and, possibly selling the tea, as a wild-crafted herb.
Well, interestingly, it also lowers blood pressure. There is evidence of that.
Okay.
And it in general, it's an immune enhancer.
Ah. Isn't it interesting how a lot of the plants that the government seems to want to ban seem to be the most useful ones medicinally?
Well, I can't speak unequivocally for the FDA-like agency in Australia, but in this country, I consider our FDA the most evil organization that we know anything about publicly.
Yeah. It really is quite awful because from what you have said, horehound is potentially a very, very useful medicinal crop.
Exactly.
It grows very, very well here. It grows. Its natural climate is a semi-arid climate for it to grow in. Okay. And it's absolutely perfectly suited to here. And I went on eBay after I'd done this research into its medicinal properties, and I found out that on eBay it's actually selling for around about $170 a kilo for the dried herb.
Wow. And that's a good farm product.
That's a good sideline. So like I say, as soon as I found that out, I stopped pulling it up. And I knew about the bronchial properties. And one health problem that I've had in the past, it almost killed me when I was about 16, was I had pneumonia, and I very nearly died at that time, and it weakened me for a great number of years afterwards. And I've found, that to this, I wouldn't quite say to this day, but I've had problems with my health and my vitality since then. Is that very common?
A major infection or flu or any major illness early in life, and early in life to me means before age 20, it can cause lifelong problems. Yes, no question about it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I've found out that I've had to really pace myself. And when I was in my late 20s, I almost died as a result of a postpartum hemorrhage. Yeah. And I found as well that really, really sapped my vitality for quite a number of years afterwards. I almost bled to death as a result of childbirth. That's for all the, people who may not have so much scientific knowledge out there. And I was speaking to somebody else. They had a hemorrhage through another cause, and they found that it was affecting them even years afterwards with blood problems. Is that very common?
Well, no, it's not common, but it does happen.
Yeah. And I have a theory that it stressed the bone marrow. That was my theory and my intuition, that almost bleeding to death, it put a great strain on the bone marrow, and that it actually took many, many years for the bone marrow to naturally recover. At the time, I was living on an island in southeast Queensland, and my husband, he was alive at the time. He drove me to the doctor who was on the island, and I'd only given birth 3 days before, and they sent me home 2 days after giving birth to my baby, back to the island, and it was a 1-hour boat trip out to the island from the mainland, and it was then a 1-hour drive from the port on the mainland into the hospital, which was in the middle of Brisbane. And so the doctor, she took one look at me and she was extremely concerned. And she said, "How long ago did she was speaking to my husband because I was so weak." She said, "How long ago did your wife give birth?" And he said, "Oh, 3 days." And her, what she immediately said was, "What is she doing back on this island?" And my husband said, "Well, they sent her home. They said, well, you're good to go. Go on, go home." And as a consequence of that, I almost bled to death, because what they hadn't realized, my son, he had a suction cup birth, and they must have pulled on the placenta and created the hemorrhage that way, as they were suction cupping the baby out.
Right.
Okay. And that was apparently what created the hemorrhage. And she said, "Listen, she was speaking to my husband. She said, "What you must do, take your wife home and put her to bed. She's to have total bed rest for 6 weeks, and I can tell you this, she will either live or she won't, because to airlift me to the hospital would have risked restarting the hemorrhage." That was her medical opinion at the time. Or to have me going off the island by boat, it would have risked restarting the hemorrhage. So she said it's not safe to remove her from the island. Take her home, total bed rest, keep the fluids up, iron supplementation. She'll either recover or she won't. And as it happened, of course, I did. But I was weakened, and I've always suspected that it's because the bone marrow was stressed, and I did not receive any blood transfusions because there were no blood transfusion facilities on the island. And
that's more than a minor injury.
When on that morning, I woke up, and I'm a Christian woman. I felt fantastic. My mind was crystal clear. My thoughts were absolutely amazing. and my hearing and my vision was supercharged, but I went to move and I felt like a sack of sand. And that's when I knew that something was wrong. And so I turned to my husband and I said, darling, I think that we'd better go and see the doctor. And I found that my voice was thin. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Well,
and
that's a major insult to the body as a whole.
Yeah, I really could have, I believe I really could have died at that time. But it is possible if you know how to deal with an invalid of that type. It is possible to pull them through without a lot of sophistication. There's nothing wrong with the hospitals. The hospitals are great. The blood transfusions are great. But if you don't have access to that degree of care, I just want people to know it is possible to pull somebody through that sort of situation.
Right.
Yeah. And, we're heading into another break. I'd like for you to speak some more about this sort of thing on the other side, because I would love to hear what you have to say about that. Hello, everybody. This is Guineith Isaac speaking again. Warming the seat this week for Vincent Finelli, and I have with us Dr. Norm Shealy. And I think that we were discussing, postpartum hemorrhages and what you can do, or any sort of hemorrhages, and what you can do to help pull somebody through, and give them a chance of actually surviving this sort of thing, because nobody ever likes to think that this sort of thing could happen in a survival situation, but it's actually probably quite a common type of trauma.
It varies all over the place as to what percentage, but for the individual, it's quite serious. Well, obviously, you have to get as much fluid in as possible. That's at the top of the list, so they don't become dehydrated as well. But for recovery, you mainly need iron and vitamin C and vitamin B12 and folic acid. Now, the folic acid is quite easy to get out of a number of vegetables, including even sweet potatoes and mostly spinach and that sort of thing. Broccoli, all of that family will have lots of folic acid. Vitamin C, of course, you get mostly from all of your yellow fruits and vegetables and oranges and citrus fruits. But B12, you cannot get except from animals. You get a little bit out of egg yolks, but mostly you get it from animal protein. Liver, of course, being the number one animal product that has adequate B12. It's a question of, in the acute situation, the most important thing is to keep fluids going. And then over the next 6 to 8 weeks, as you recover, to increase the folic acid, the vitamin C, and the iron.
Yeah, I think that's more or less the advice that the doctor gave to us when I was experiencing that problem. It was basically, and also the other thing that the doctor advised was total bed rest.
Right.
No getting up, walking around, or any of that sort of thing.
Well, that's
and certainly no heavy labor.
Well, that's particularly true because, of course, the uterus is in the lower part of the body, and standing up even increases the drain on it. Yeah, that's right. And fortunately, and like I said, that the stress on the bone marrow, I don't think that I've heard of that from any medical literature over the following years. But what I do know is that
in the 3 or 4 or 5 years following that trauma, what happened was I had chronic anemia to the point where I was actually hospitalized at least once and had to go on, I had to have the iron injections in my posterior.
Right. A lot of people don't get enough iron out of the food.
Yeah, and I've always suspected that there may have been a link between that and the hemorrhage, and the fact that my bone marrow had been strained somehow. Would you say that was possible?
Oh yes. It was probably borderline. A lot of women, men rarely get anemia unless they have active bleeding of some kind, but women, because of the, monthly menstrual cycles, do rely upon adequate iron and other such things.
Yeah, and I don't think that I was getting much meat at the time either, and that probably played into it as well. I wasn't actually vegetarian, but it was a time meat was just very expensive at that time, and I had it was a very, very difficult time in our life. And,
by the way, interestingly, the plant sources of iron are not as absorbable. They're not as digestible as meat.
I don't think they are. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we're heading into another break. I'll see you on the other side, and I would love to get back to talking about medicinal herbs, if that's okay with you. Hello, this is Guineith Isaac here, sitting in for Vincent Finelli this week. I have Dr. Norm Shealy with us, and I would like to ask Dr. Shealy about a number of medicinal herbs. One of them, this is one that I grow a lot of here, and that is the nopal cactus. That's the prickly pear, Ficus indica, the Indian fig cactus. And I've heard that it has remarkable medicinal properties. I don't know if you've gone into that at all.
Well, interestingly, as you were saying that, I tapped it into my computer because I know of it as a preserve, if you will. It's been made that way mainly, but its greatest benefit is lowering blood sugar, probably because of pectin, and it has fiber as well. It's also used to help lower cholesterol, for hangover and diarrhea. I guess that's one of its greatest, colitis and diarrhea. And it's even been used for benign prostatic hypertrophy, the number one physical problem.
What was that, sorry?
I'm sorry?
Prostate.
Yes.
Prostate problems.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's another excellent herb.
Well, that's really quite amazing. And also, it is also an excellent source of vitamin C, the fruit that is. Yes,
of course.
Yeah.
Actually, you can eat to practice well, I guess you call them the leaves anyway. You can eat the plant itself.
Yeah. I think that the new young leaves before the spines have formed are the part that is normally eaten in Mexico.
Right, I would think so.
Yeah. Would it normally be the leaf or the fruit that is mostly ingested for medicine, or both?
It's both.
Both. Okay. And do they have the same benefits?
Well, I think that the fruit might be. I'm going to look it up because I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I would think the fruit might be the thing that. Well, it's equal as far as I can tell. So they're both good.
Okay, that's good. Another plant that a medicinal plant that I have growing around here, and it's more or less rampant. It came in, I think, with a bad batch of hay for the horse once, and it decided to stay, but I recognised it, and so I let it stay, is the good old-fashioned stinging nettle.
Oh, nettle. Now, there's another one that is particularly good for the prostate.
Extremely medicinally beneficial, isn't it?
Yes, and its greatest benefit, as a male, its greatest benefit is for the prostate. It's one of the best for that, but it has many other uses.
Yeah, it's also, once again, quite a good blood tonic as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it is a useful alternative to the over-the-counter non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. It's another of those anti-inflammatories to use for treating arthritis.
Yeah. I've heard of the therapy of getting a bundle of it and sort of hitting your arthritic joints with the sting.
Yeah.
I'd heard of that.
But it's anti-inflammatory when taken by the mouth as well.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so there's no need to inflict the stings on yourself. You can just make hot tea.
You can have a tea. You can cook it, of course. The leaves can be steamed and cooked.
Yes.
Spinach.
It is actually delicious. And initially my boys would turn their noses up at it, but it had such wonderful health benefits that I just began cutting it up in the soup and just not telling them because it is a wonderful nutritional. It's full of minerals. It's full of iron. It's full of and it has very, very high chlorophyll levels as well. Is something that I've noticed. Even in this dry, arid climate we've got here, it just grows such an intense shade of green.
Well, again, it lowers blood sugar as well. So it's another of those all-round great herbs.
Yeah. So, and another one that I've got, this one I actually have deliberately planted it all over the place, but I am wildcrafting it. It's Salvia officinalis, garden sage.
Oh yeah, well, yes, there are many varieties, but officinalis.
Yeah, that's the regular grey.
Yeah, the regular old-fashioned sage.
Yeah, and can you comment on any health benefits that might have?
Well, it's said to be a fertility drug, so it helps. Decreased fever. It also is highly stimulating in a good way to the stomach and to help digestion. It's anti-inflammatory. Notice how often that comes up.
Yeah.
It reduces muscle tension. You can even take it as a steam inhalation for asthma attacks. But to help reduce or relieve indigestion is great. But its most important probably is decreasing anxiety. Yeah.
It's the medicinal use that I heard of was as a gentle but beneficial mental stimulant.
Yes.
Okay. And what it does is, the reason why it's called sage is it was reputed to increase wisdom.
Exactly.
And that could be, in modern terms, would be gentle natural antipsychotic, mood stabilizer. And this sort of thing is the guessing that I'm, as a layperson, would come under the category of mood of increasing wisdom in the ancient way of speaking. It helps to stabilize the thoughts.
Right. Well, that would be anti-anxiety, yes, definitely.
That's right, yeah. And that is absolutely marvelous, and once again grows well in an arid or semi-arid climate, provided that it is established in the winter. Now, there's one that I'm not quite sure of its medicinal properties, but I very much like it, and it's a good bee fodder. And that's why it grows here. That's why I'm establishing it here, is primarily for the bee fodder. But I would like any comments that you might have on any medicinal properties, and that's a herb called Centaurea. Centaurea. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
I don't know that. I don't know that one, no.
Okay, or Centauri. I'll have to do some research in other places there for that one. Another one I'm sure you have heard of is feverfew.
Freesia.
Feverfew.
Feverfew, of course.
Yes. Feverfew.
Oh, yeah, well, its name tells you the whole thing, doesn't it? I mean,
it kind of does.
But it's interesting. It's a headache.
It's very good, as I've found, as a tonic for children with colds.
And it's also excellent for migraine.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And it's supposed to help you get pregnant if you are having fertility problems.
Okay. Well, that's handy to know.
It can reduce muscle tension, help diarrhea. In other words, again, calm the stomach and the intestinal system.
Yeah. And that's also, it's one of the bark flowers, isn't it? I'm just trying to remember if it is. It's one of the bark flower remedies.
Oh, bark flower, yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure that it is. But yeah, that's one that I initially planted and is in the process of going rampant here, sort of with some help from me. Because it sets seed. The seeds are tiny, of course, it's a daisy, and the flowers are the medicinal part, right?
Right.
You can dry them, you can use them fresh, or you can steep them in alcohol.
Right.
Is the three ways that I have heard of using the feverfew flowers.
Right.
And the dried flowers or the fresh flowers, I have heard, can be made into a tea and mixed with maybe lemon and honey, and that is a very it's a very gentle, healing sort of tonic medicine, especially for young people who have, got colds and flu and that sort of thing. And once again, very, very easy to grow. It basically grows in any disturbed ground, in my experience.
Well, notice how many times we come up with calming the nervous system. I think that if there's any, it seems to balance or calm the nervous system.
Yeah. No, it's a wonderful, wonderful plant, that's for sure. We're coming up to the last segment, so I'll see you again in a few minutes. Dr. Norm Shealy. Hello there, everybody. This is Guineith Isaac speaking. Here today with Dr. Norm Shealy. This is actually the final segment of the show, Dr. Shealy. And,
I would like to talk about my favorite herb group.
I was going to say, is there anything you would like to say?
Yeah, well, let's not leave out mushrooms.
Oh, yes. Yes,
Shiitake,
go for it.
Reishi, cordyceps, maitake. All of those are among the... and then, of course, turkey tail and lion's mane. All of the mushrooms are among the strongest immune-enhancing things on Earth. They are superb.
Yeah. Would you put morels in there as well?
Laurel?
Morels.
Oh, morels.
Morel. Yes. Sorry.
Well, yes.
Once again, it's the accent. Yes, morels.
Right. Well, that's how we pronounce them.
They grow wild around here.
Yes, they do here too, and they do in Wisconsin where I've lived. Oh, they're excellent. Oh, in fact, even old button mushrooms are not bad.
Really?
Yeah, even those have some, halitosis better than no grass at all. Any mushroom is better than no mushroom.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely love mushrooms. We've got to warn people, though. You've got to be absolutely sure of the identity of the mushroom that you are picking before you go ingesting it. Because there are some out there that will kill you as well.
Oh, yes. But
yeah.
even button mushrooms enhance, the bone marrow. And, let's face it, on a scale of 0 to 10, maybe they're on a 5 compared to a 10 with lion's mane or turkey tail, but they're good.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. They've actually got a mushroom here in Australia, which is it's called a shelf mushroom. Okay, and it grows on the trees. It has a woody kind of structure, and it looks just like a shelf. Okay, it has no gills underneath, and if you were to pick it, it would more or less resemble a soft piece of wood. They probably have those in the United States as well.
Right,
but
they go everywhere.
Yeah, they actually are very, very good at boosting the immune system. Okay, but you've got to get the brown ones or the ones with stripes on them. Because a good rule with mushrooms, if it's brightly coloured, except for a few kinds of oyster mushrooms, if it's brightly coloured, it's probably best left in the forest. It's brightly coloured for a reason. So it's a big red flag, except for a few kinds of oyster mushrooms.
Well,
they
have
bright
that found them are good too.
What was that? Sorry.
The shelf mushrooms. They also, in every mushroom I've ever found, helps the immune system.
Oh gosh, yep. No, that's right. And so I've actually got some shelf mushroom shaved up and stored away in my herbal medicine kit, and because it is so beneficial. But you are absolutely right about fungi. They're just all around good guys. Like I said, except for even the poisonous ones, they do have a medicinal use, but they're not for use by the general public. They require
really your enemies.
that they require you to be really competent, like a medical doctor or a skilled herbalist, before you're going to mess with any of the more interesting kind of mushrooms. And I wouldn't recommend the public generally deal with them. That's the end of the broadcast.
Have fun.
Can you believe it's been 2 hours?
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
It's been great speaking with you, Dr. Shealy, and I look forward to speaking to you again sometime soon.